Okay, here we are in the system. We've logged in as an administrator and we're on the dark red Administer Learning button. And here we've selected to add students, which is the first option available to us. We can add individuals to the system, add users, by pressing the Add User button, and here we can enter the information by hand, and we can do that for all people in the system if you wish to. But the quickest way of entering people into the system is to import users. We click on the Import Users button. Now here we have a number of options available to us, but the first one we're going to select is the import new users, and this is on 95% of occasions. This is what the option that you will require when you're first setting up the system. We can download a template. If we click on that option, we can download a template, and that produces for us a spreadsheet template, an Excel template, which we can complete with our user details. Okay, here we have the import template for the SMCR solution. There are many different fields that can be filled in, but what I'm going to do is just tell you the ones that we do need. The first one is the first name and the last name. Those are mandatory fields and do need to be completed prior to an import. The company, that can be defined, and departments go underneath the company. You do need, if you are defining departments, you will need to define a company because of the way that the import works. The import will fail without this. So within a company we will have various departments under that company, and then we have another company with departments under that company. So you need to define the company and the department at the same time if you're going to use those fields. The job needs to match to the job in the SMCR solution. So in that case, if we just go to jobs, if we're using the insurance jobs, insurance senior manager, insurance certification staff, and insurance conduct rules, we have to have the exact text that copies that. So here we would have, for instance, insurance conduct rules to match that to a conduct rule employee. Location, again, that's an optional, and that can be any location-based descriptor of the import. Role is important. Role which should be defaulted to the role in the SMCR solution. This is generally would be a learner. If we just go to roles, to show you, this would generally be a learner. That's anyone who isn't a compliance manager or administrator. If someone wanted to have a different function, you can either call them a compliance manager or administrator. But it's important, again, to get this wording exactly as per the system. So when we're importing it, there's an exact match between these. Otherwise, it will just create a new role for that person. If we scroll across, we've got some more location fields: country, city, and again, those are linked as well. So if we're defining a city, we have to define a country as well. We have an email, which is a mandatory field, so the system doesn't function without email, so you need to put an email in there. Phone, again, another optional field. Username, people usually have that the same as the email field. So if you don't have a separate username, copy the email field into username, and that is a mandatory field as well. Other fields: description, non-mandatory field. Group name, that can group your users together, that's non-mandatory. Password, you can leave that blank. Due to GDPR constraints, it's best to leave that blank, and then when you launch the system, tell people to click on the forgotten password link in order to generate a new password. ULN is, you can ignore that. Managers, if you want to assign certain employees to certain managers, you can use that, separating those personnel by commas, but again, I would ignore that for the time being. The last field is staff type, SMCR, and what this allows you to do is to define, if we just go into an individual, it lets you define this field here, which is the staff type. Now again, we need an exact match between what's in the staff type and what's in the spreadsheet. So for instance, in this case, if you wanted a conduct rule person, you would call them standard conduct rules. And if it's any different to exactly what's listed here, standard conduct rules, it won't get matched, and this won't populate. So you have to make sure it's standard bracket conduct rules, certification staff, or senior manager for the appropriate staff type. So when you're doing the SMCR solution, the mandatory fields you need to do, just to recap, are first name, last name, the job, which should match the job in the job field. Let me just go and check what job we want. So we'll call ourselves, let's just say we're working for an asset management company, we'll call ourselves Asset Management Senior Manager. We want to put in the role, we can put that as learner. If we want to leave that as blank, it'll automatically populate as learner. So that's non-mandatory, but I'm just filling this in to show you how we're going to import an example senior manager. Email address needs to be done, put my email address in there, and the username, I will copy and paste that in there as well. And the last one we need to do, which is mandatory, is the staff type for SMCR. So I'm just going to go and check what the staff type is called. So here it's Senior Manager. So we make sure that's Senior Manager. And here we have an example import for a Senior Manager. So we have my first name, last name. We have the exact job to match the job. We have the role as learner. We have the email address and the username, which I'm using both for those, so that's what I'd log in with. And we're using staff type as senior manager. And you can customize your import spreadsheet, completing any other information you want to into that, and it's then be ready for an import. When you're completing the spreadsheet, it's very important to not edit the columns and enter all information available in there that you can. Once that's done, you can choose the file that you're choosing for import. You can upload it and then press import, and that will then populate the database accordingly with people into the system, like so.